So this story is twofold. It's a failure of the media in even covering it in the first place. But it's also just indicative of this desire to keep bringing the public school system down, despite all these other factors that are showing that part of the reason why it's declining is the lack of quality education and the lack of focus on academics. So this is from the Washington State Standard. The headline, "Is Washington School Board Association seeing a conservative takeover?" Anonymous members say changes in the group's voting rules are allowing anti-LGBTQIA+ measures and efforts to roll back diversity and equity initiatives to gain traction. Allow me to read from this stunning piece of journalism for you. Members of a nonpartisan state agency made up of local school board officials from across Washington are warning that conservative groups opposed to teaching about race and gender in schools are wielding increased influence within the organization's ranks. An unknown number of Washington State School Directors Association members outlined their concerns in an anonymous letter released last month. The letter contends that school board members and directors connected with Moms for Liberty and other conservative groups in Washington are, quote, actively working to undo recent progress around diversity, equity, and inclusion in public schools, enact anti-LGBTQIA+ measures, and have a stated agenda to try to move public money to charter schools and school choice vouchers. Quote, "This is an organized effort to use this state-funded agency to serve a very narrow and harmful agenda that would set Washington's public schools back 50 years, the letter read. It adds that the movement threatens to delegitimize WSSDA as a state advocacy organization. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So you have this state agency. It's made up of local school board officials from across the state. And some of them, maybe, but an unknown number of them wrote a letter saying they were concerned that some people are anti-gay on the board and too conservative, and they're going to take the public school system back 50 years, and it's really scary because they want to give money to charter schools. So the first problem here, and this is the failure of the media, why would you do a whole article based on a letter whose authors are anonymous and who you acknowledge you cannot tell us how many even signed on to it or how many were behind it? So you don't even know if the person or persons who wrote the letter are members of this board, right? Right? And you don't know how many it is. So you have this massive board with all of these members across the state, and you're doing an entire article based on anonymous maybe board members and maybe just one board member or maybe more, we don't know. How is that a news story? How in the world is that a news story? I also have to laugh at the entire framing of it because all of the stuff they talked about in there is like great. I'm like, oh, they're trying to undo recent progress around DEI? Great, because DEI is racist. And DEI is part of the reason why parents don't want their kids in public schools. And any journalist who cares to approach a situation like this in an unbiased fashion would realize exactly what this is. This is the tentacles of the WEA. You can see it quite clearly, the Washington Education Association, the most powerful union in the state of Washington. Because you have that little quote in the letter that says, they're trying to move public money to charter schools and school choice vouchers, which public school teachers and the public school union are very opposed to, obviously, because if you as a taxpayer, because it's like, what, $17,000 per pupil in Washington state, that's the cost in taxpayer money per pupil that goes into the public school system. So if you then take the cost per pupil and you're allowing parents to have, instead of they have school choice, they can now use that money and the state will give them a voucher to send their child to a charter school. You will have flight from public school systems like we have never seen before. Because for a lot of families, the only barrier to leaving a crumbling public school system is money. It costs a lot of money to put your kid in a private school. It costs a lot of money to have a parent that's staying home and maybe stepping away from their job to homeschool a child. Now, if you take that financial aspect out of it and you give parents a choice, a lot of parents are going to choose that public school isn't the best place for their kids. And the school districts and the Washington Education Association know that. And that's why they oppose school choice. Because think about that. If you thought, as a public school system, as the OSPI head, as the Washington Education Association, if you thought that the education, the quality education you were providing in public schools was top notch, right? And you were really proud of it, why would you oppose parents having a choice where you could tell parents, hey, either you take public school or a charter school that you don't have to pay for, that comes taxpayer funded for both of them. If they were confident in the quality of the education that they were giving kids, wouldn't you do that? It's like the people who want to take Donald Trump off the ballot. It's like, well, why are you taking a choice away? Why don't you give people a better choice so they vote for your person? But the public school system and the WEA, they know that a lot of parents would choose charter schools because the public school system is a failure. So they want to force parents. They want to force parents to stay in public schools because they cannot afford to instead. So what this letter is a couple probably WEA members who are like, we got to paint this as a right-wing extremism taking over this statewide board. And so let's just write an anonymous letter. It's just it's just me. It's just some wacko. And they push it out and the Washington State Standard does a whole story on it. They're real crazy stuff. Let's go on. The letter's authors said conservative groups have gained influence within the association because of new rules that allow each district to have one vote. This means a district serving 100 students has the same power as one with 10,000 students. But the letter says this change is allowing conservative school board members to press ahead with attempts to revise the association's positions to remove language promoting diversity and equity. Another proposal seeks to make local control the guiding principle of the organization's advocacy platform in Olympia. And conservatives would prefer local control for this very reason. These proposals could be considered at the association's General Assembly meeting this September. And this is the Peace Day. I've been using also the phrase Peace Day Resistance a lot lately. This is the real kicker for me. This is a quote from the letter. Who authored these proposals remains unanswered, continuing the concerning trend that positions intended to guide WSSDA's operations and advocacy are being created by an outside entity rather than solely by elected board directors, as is the objective and intent. So these anonymous letter writers who don't like the idea of local control of school districts because they want all the school districts to be Seattle style in their DEI and all of that. We can't let local districts and conservatives control the school districts in their own areas. We can't have that. We need to control everything. We need to make sure all the ideology is aligned. So these letter writers or letter writer, anonymous, unknown, that are saying, well, these proposals for local control and to revise language around diversity and equity, who authored those proposals remains a mystery, they write in their anonymous letter. So you're mad because you don't know who's authoring these conservative, extreme, dangerous proposals, and you're thinking, well, maybe it's Moms for Liberty. Meanwhile, you're writing an anonymous letter, and you're not putting your names forth with this opinion opposed to it, so you can be anonymous, but they can't be anonymous. These people it's too easy with them. It's too easy to show how utterly insane that is. I also, again, I don't understand the opposition to local control. Why would you not? This is similar to, why I agreed with the decision I know I'm getting far afield, but the decision to send Roe, reverse Roe, send the abortion issue back to the states. It's like you have then, as an American, on a highly contentious issue, you have a choice. If you really live and die by the abortion issue, then you can move somewhere else. And the same with schools. It's like you can go to a school and you can move your family to a place in the state of Washington where a school aligns with either your values, like if you want to go to a school in Seattle where they push gender ideology and they let their kids walk out in solidarity with Hamas and all of that, and you're cool, like that's great. But if you don't agree with that and you want your child to focus on education, you can choose a school district in Washington state that's more focused on that. And the WEA doesn't want that because the WEA and its teachers and activists, they want to continue to push their ideology down the throats of kids because they're training them to be future activists and future Democrats and to continue on into the world and carry on their tradition. I'm sorry, that's not a conspiracy. That's just true. That is a Brandi certified fact.